Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Welcome back to the SOS Pod with Molly and Alyssa.
A very special episode today. I am so excited about this.
Yeah, I'm really jazzed.
I'm jazzed. Wow, jazz.
This shirt is jazzed.
Yeah, the shirt is jazzed and it matches your headphones.
Hell yeah.
So today we are interviewing one of my friends that I actually went to college with, and I have been admiring and watching her career path from afar since we graduated. She has quite an eccentric mix of things that she has done in the past that all led her to starting her own creative agency in New York City a few years back that is wildly successful. She's also a freelance writer. She's done a million things. We're going to get into it with her. But she is the CEO and co-founder of Scout Lab, which is a all-service, purpose-driven creative agency. And so she has a business partner there that the two of them, it's women-founded. The two of them, started this, I know, a few years back and have just really blossomed. And I'm so excited to have her on. She's joining us from New York. And her Instagram is at Kaitlyn Barclay, KAITLYN BARCLAY. You can check out Scout Lab, the creative agency, at Scout Lab. And yeah, without further ado, let's welcome Kaitlyn and hear about the twisting turns to, I guess, before we jump on, the reason I really am excited to have her is because she exemplifies the fact that there's not a just drawn out path for someone to start a business, but you don't know where things are going to lead. And I think she's a beautiful lesson in just like going with the flow of your life, following your passions, and you will land on your feet and you will change the world. So bring on Kaitlyn. Welcome, Kaitlyn, to SOS.
Yay!
All the way from New York.
Me.
Oh my God, of course. It's an honor.
Thank you so much for coming on. This is a really important episode because I feel like your story is so fascinating to me because you have all these seemingly random, disconnected things that you've done, and you've lived like 6 lives, and we're like 32 or so, So I'm just like, how and started a incredibly successful business, and I think a lot of people have misconceptions about like, well, you must have known exactly what you wanted to do and had this one path that you walked down to figure it out, and obviously that's not the case. But we kind of want to jump in and hear one or multiple or your biggest SOS moments previous to you starting your company.
Yeah, there are so many to choose from. The one that comes to mind is when I did my biggest life pivot. So I was in a job I wasn't super satisfied with, but it was like the job everyone tells you to have.
Yes.
And I was in a relationship with like the guy I wasn't happy with, but it's like the guy that you're supposed to be with in the city that you're supposed to be in with the friends that you're supposed to hang out with. And I didn't realize how complacent I had become. I, moved to San Francisco and took a bunch of different risks that did not pan out, but I was lucky enough to be in tech, working with really incredible people, doing really incredible things. And after that roller coaster ride, 2015, my last startup was acquired by ClassPass. I was like, I'm going to go work at a big corporation. I was like, working at Levi Strauss in this relationship. And didn't realize how I had like stopped growing because I thought I had achieved this thing, this life that you were supposed to have, but nothing was like growing with me. And I happened to be at a wedding with my ex-boyfriend and found out that he had cheated on me. And
at the wedding you found out?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This was his like entire family was there.
Wine for this?
I found out he cheated on me, and then we went to the rehearsal dinner.
Oh my God.
It was one of those things where you're like, you're feeling every emotion, cheating is just one form of neglect. So you're negotiating, you're like kind of in the stages of grief. And I just remember being like, this isn't it. Like, this isn't it. I was sold a false book of goods by society by like the way that women were programmed.
Yes.
And
yes.
I was in this scenario where like I'd felt deceived by the thing that I was supposed to have. And I was like, I'm not happy in San Francisco. I'm not happy in this cush corporate job. And I'm not happy in this relationship with a man who was like driving me to get married. He was like, I want a white picket fence and I want to move to the suburbs. And like, no, it's too late for me to move to New York. He was 33 at the time, like my age. I'm 32. So it was just like kind of this reckoning. And I remember piecing out of the wedding, like literally taking the black pickup truck that he had rented, driving through the backwoods of Maine. I was like a Taylor Swift song, just like
Oh my
sobbing.
I was literally gonna
Like,
say, yeah.
I had like blonde short hair at the time, like in my
God.
little button down, like this is wrong. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, and I remember texting my friend Romy. I was like, well, at least I can move to New York. 3 weeks later, I quit my job, broke up with my boyfriend, moved out of my home, and sent myself to New York with like no plan other than like, I'll figure it out. I looked at one apartment. It's the apartment I lived in for 2 years. I met my co-founder in like a wine bar. We started Scout Lab the day after.
Oh
And
my gosh.
it was the best thing. It was the sauciest of moments, but like
Yeah.
a real
That's-
life redirect.
That's like, doesn't seem like when it rains, it pours and everything happens
Yes.
good and bad. It just seems like when you remove one blockage, all these good things happen. And when you have a blockage, it's like from every angle it's coming at you, like relationship and work and your home life.
Yes.
And
And we were just talking about adapting, and like that is literally the most quintessential story about how a human being can adapt to these situations.
yeah.
And not to be cheesy, make lemons out of lemonade. Or no,
Yeah.
That too. Make lemonade.
lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
Oh God. Anyway, but
And it actually takes like a massive amount of guts to do that. It seems like in the moment, tell me if I'm wrong, it's like when you make a decision like that, there isn't another option really, because you're just like, I have to. But at the same time, it takes so much conviction and so many guts because it's really risky and it's scary. You don't have answers. And we're programmed just to think like, but then what? But then what? But then, you know?
and listen to like the worst case scenario but you know, it's all in your head.
Yeah.
What about like before Scout Lab? Like what was your career path? Like what were you trying to pursue before this?
Yeah.
Aside
So-
from that corporate job that you were in.
Yeah. So I was in tech for 6 years or so. So went out of college, so transferred schools during the recession in 2008.
She left
Finished
all
my-
of us. Left all of us to you.
Kicking and screaming. I mean, and I live in like duality. So like I was in Denver and I don't think there was another person that like partied harder than I did. Like
I don't
did.
think so.
And was just a part of everything. Like if there was a flame, I was gonna touch it, and that was great. I'm so grateful for that experience. But then like, you know, had to move home in the recession, and then I was like vegan and working at a yoga studio and like 5 jobs, and was so hell-bent on moving to San Francisco to pursue a career in tech. Ended up, you know, doing some really cool stuff, was able to work at a startup that was in the Facebook seed fund incubator at the time. So like, and that was like OG seed incubator for Facebook at the time.
Wow.
So met some really cool people. And then again, from Portland to San Francisco, took a bet on myself, was like, I'm gonna give myself a month and see how it goes. And was able to, you know, land at a tech startup, just work my ass off.
Yeah.
That was the thing, like you're around a lot of smart people, but like you will always have your work ethic, and I will never claim to be the smartest person in the room, but like I will work the hardest. I will do whatever it takes. And I think that was my mentality when I was young in tech, because I was surrounded by a bunch of people whose pedigree definitely like, you know, outpaced mine in every way. But I was like, I will just get the job done. And I think I understood people really well. So I worked kind of my way up. Ended up working, was the first employee at the second startup, and we were acquired a year and a half later by ClassPass.
Wow.
And then after that, so that was wild, like scaling this organization nationally and like figuring it out from the ground up. and then went to Levi Strauss, which was like, by the way, I've met some of my best friends there, had an incredible time, but it was just, you're a cog, right?
Yep.
And it's, it wasn't for me.
It's
and
like we're taught to think that type of situation is the end game. But then you're there and you're like 20 something or like early 30s and you're like, wait, what? But what now?
Yeah. What now? Well, and that's the other thing is, I think that type of environment just wasn't for me. I have friends that still work at, massive corporations, Levi Strauss in particular, and have absolutely crushed it. Like they've figured it out. They're able to realize themselves in this organization. I just, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so then when I moved to New York, I always knew I wanted to like pursue my own thing at some point, and then met my co-founder Willow, and we were just so values aligned. There are all of these like, how to find a co-founder, best practices, like everyone has a thought piece, but it was really that values alignment, and we work so fucking hard. Like we both are just, we will not stop until the job is done, and that I think is a huge reason why we are successful.
Yeah, that's massive. I wanted to ask you, so like while you're working through all these jobs and you're kind of like realizing different parts of yourself, like you're mentioning your work ethic and your gift with people, which you really, really do have. That's like, you're so charismatic and you've always been, you just like bring out light and like happiness and communication in people. I feel like you just make people feel like they can just open up, and everyone, I don't know, you have a way of making people kind of relax, which I would imagine, obviously in business settings, that's very important. And especially when you're dealing with like acquisitions and companies, you want people to be chill so that they'll, but I wanted to ask you, how did you start to refine your idea of like what your best gifts are? And then apply that to the benefit of society in your own company. Like it's one thing to know, well, I was good in this job because I'm good at this, but to refine all of those things and really look at what your gifts are to start your own company, how did you refine that?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I would always advise anyone to pay attention to the things that you pay attention to. So that's like, I was really obsessed early on with community building. And so like my first tech startup was in the social commerce space, but I was like head of community. And I just like loved finding like the stickiness or what got people excited, and like in person and off in online situations. And so kind of started to build on that more and more professionally, but also refining that skill really naturally, personally, because I really love people. Yeah.
You've always been very like involved, like you said, even in college, you're involved in all these groups and communities that's glue people together.
Binge drinking 8 nights a week, and yet I'm like Panhellenic Council and Student Senate, and just like every extra
superhero.
I remember, tour guide leader. I don't know who. Put me in charge of
I forgot
really?
you were. No, she literally
gave tours like
truly like partied harder than anyone I know at school, and that's including all the frat boys that we ever met, and was like up and at 'em and involved in everything. I don't know how.
Oh wow, I'm obsessed with you.
Do you want to know one of my like favorite college stories is I was coming back. I hadn't gone to Gamma Phi Beta, the sorority house. I was coming back from where I was the night before, and I looked at my watch and I was like, oh fuck, I have to give a tour in 15 minutes, and walked straight to give the tour. Gave the tour. God. And then went home. I'm like
during your walk.
It's 9 p.m. on a Friday. I have to go to sleep. But I'm like, she was wild.
Yeah, seriously. And you, I don't know, made it all happen. That's why like people take any lessons from this. It's like you can live. That's the other thing. When you mentioned earlier, your ex-boyfriend being like, well, it's too late for me to move to New York. And he was like 33. And it's like, you can restart your life at any point. Like, moving somewhere without a plan or anything is terrifying, but it's also liberating because you remind yourself, oh, I can do this as whenever I want. Like it's not easy, but you can. And so it's just like a reminder that you can live multiple lives. You can change your path. You can change your goals at any time.
Whether you were a partier or not.
Yeah. Well, and you owe it to yourself.
Yes.
Like if I think of inviting who I was 5 years over to sit next to me and have a cocktail, like I wouldn't recognize her. She was a fraction of who
Right.
I am now, who is probably a fraction of who I will be in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think the moment that you said something, Molly, in the very beginning, where you're like, you just have to, you become tunnel vision when you make a decision like that, because you've just chosen yourself. There are very rare moments in your life where you get to choose yourself.
Yeah.
But when you are given the opportunity, you owe it to yourself to take it, and you must follow that intuition for as far as it takes you, because it's too easy then to find yourself in circumstances where you're considering other people's opinions again, and you have responsibilities and commitments and attachments. So
yeah. That on your site for Scout Lab, it says we build brands that shift culture. And I know your personal like convictions, and you really fight for what you believe in, and with like humanitarian issues and just like social justice issues in general. And I'm assuming, well, I know through the site, I don't know Willow, but that she's the same. So it's like, how are you guys bringing that to shift culture as opposed to just, working on creative branding for all these big brands, whatever clients you can get? Your purpose is to shift the culture. And what does that mean to you guys?
yeah, a couple of things. So one, what's so special about Willow, and I think what's so special about our partnership, is the idea of like, if not you, then who?
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like you often find yourself I often find myself going into these rooms where I'm like, who's the adult? And you're like, fuck, I'm the adult. And you just realize that like there have been far more incapable people in charge than whatever imposter syndrome is telling you. So
You
like
are so right.
should just do it. Like you can go for the promotion or make yourself a CEO overnight or start the thing. And so I think by virtue of like the way that we practice our values is by showing up again and again for each other and our team. And it's being, comfortable being different in rooms full of, homogenous people.
Yeah.
I think like Willow and I were very familiar with that experience working early on as tech, right? Because that was, in 2010, 2009, when we were there, it was, even worse than it is today.
Yeah.
So yeah, that experience really, we took the best and we like also took the worst from that, and really wanted to create a space where you could bring your full self to work to solve really hairy creative problems.
Yeah.
And we always wanted to allow people at Scout Lab to like go there. So like share their lived experience or unpack the nuance. And I think when Willow and I first met, it was right after the 2016 election. And that was like a huge point of, I think, cohesion for us, because we were marketers. We were seeing one of the most horrific marketing campaigns in history impact the highest office in the world.
Yes.
And I think we felt a responsibility as marketers to make sure that we're propagating the right ones, not just the ones that were like
there
paying for our salary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and she, so we took that shared kind of frustration and created Scout Lab as, again, we have to be in these rooms because like no one's in charge. Pepsi was appropriating the Black Lives Matter movement. Bic was putting pink on a product and calling it for women. Like, and these, transgressions of these multinational corporations happen even today.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's one of those things where you have a responsibility to be in the room to say like, this is right and this is wrong, or this needs to be unpacked.
Yes.
Way more.
Right. And especially as women, so many of those things that, we get to the top of, there might be a lot of female faces or faces of color in the campaigns for all these brands. But when you get really to who's in the room, who's a CEO, who's
Kendall
like,
Jenner.
Yeah.
it's just, it really
That
is
Pepsi
like,
ad was something else.
I know.
That's exactly what came into my mind. But Scout Lab it's so interesting because, and you're just talking about this, you and Willow are so good at reading people, and you're successful, and women, and you're occupying spaces that are, I mean, I can't even imagine how many men that you talk to on a regular basis and have to work with. And what is it like working in that kind of like, patriarchal space, especially in the tech industry, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that we live in this like really exciting time where you have the, like, how would I say this? I think it's really exciting because of where we've been and what we've created, that we have the privilege and opportunity to just show up as ourselves and kind of like lean on that. Hopefully what we're doing is making other people that, see themselves in us in any capacity feel comfortable in those spaces as well. And I think that me trying specifically as a leader to show up as who I am in all facets, right? And same with Willow. Like, we're really unabashed about like sharing our lived experience as a leader. And I think that is the way that we like fight against the issues that we've seen in the past, right? Like, I've been sexually harassed at work. I've had every kind of ridiculous thing that you would associate to tech or venture capital like happen. And it's everywhere. So I think now that we're in this position of power, so to speak, right? We're still a small firm. We have a long way to go, but it's really just trying to show up as like my full identity.
That's sorry. That's really powerful because it's like a simple thing conceptually, like, oh, well, yeah, but obviously it's not that easy. And the statement that it makes for you to come in as yourself and not come in as, now I'm my boardroom Kaitlyn, and now I'm this Kaitlyn, and now I'm working with this brand, so I'm this Kaitlyn. It's like, obviously there's a little of that because you're catering to your clientele, but you're not changing who you are. And that's, I think women especially we don't realize how often we do that, because it's a fine line sometimes between just catering to if you have clients, catering to that person. And then it can be a fine line between like, okay, now I'm not being authentic to what I believe in or who I am, or even like when Alyssa and I worked in restaurants together, and we always joked about, it was like the most obnoxious thing. I would hear my voice change when I'd get to a table, and I was like,
hi,
what the fuck? Like, why can't I just go up to them and be like, hey guys, it was like I'd be like, hi, how are you? Who is that? Like, that's not even, and they're not going to care if I come up and my voice is like lower like it normally is and I say something. They don't care. So what are we doing? And I would imagine, I know that was like with a lot of, our male coworkers would say they had a different server voice too, but women in particular, and I'm sure it's the same when you're in rooms with clients in tech or anything, where you got to kind of check yourself.
It's interesting. There's this book called Word Slut by Amanda Montell, which I'm completely obsessed with, and it talks about the language of feminism, and it unpacks these things like upspeak, or speaking in a higher octave so that you're a little bit more palatable,
right?
As tools that we've used as women in order to get our opinions across, in order to be heard, that are then shoved in our face and vilified.
Exactly.
Like, don't do upspeak, do not use fillers. And then you can expand it out. Like, there are terms that are perceived as ghetto. These are, and it's like you are forced to create another language. You are forced to create another dialect. You are forced to create a way in which you are either able to communicate with your community or communicate in the outward world. And then in the same breath, you're vilified for using those tools. So it's interesting. Because I notice I do it all. I pitch every single day basically, and I use these things that people try and coach out of me. But I'm like, no, I am successful using these tools.
Right.
And also like I've developed them as a defense mechanism, and it's a form of oppression saying,
Yes.
that's now bad.
It's very interesting because it can be flipped on its head just the same. And then why should we? Because there are certain things that are more naturally. I hate blanket statements about women do this and men are like this, but obviously there's a difference in the sexes. There's differences in if you have. There are feminine things and masculine things that men and women all have inside of us. But you're right. It's like there are certain things that why should we have to assimilate to sound just like the men to be respected, and then all the finer details in that of like taking out what is conditioned, what isn't really necessary, and what is, like our voice octave, those kinds of things.
Or how many times we have to apologize. I've had to how many emails where you take out the exclamation marks and add smiley faces and stop apologizing. The apologizing thing is something that I'm still trying to figure out because I don't know. I'm on the fence with it. I just feel like I think and I'm sorry is nice.
I know,
I think it can go a long way. I don't think we have to apologize for apologizing all the time. I don't know.
I know.
There's nuance there, right?
Yeah.
I think about it a lot because it's, call this what it is, but like I'm a business owner and I believe in what we do more than anything. And if I have to play to an audience that will only hear me if I'm more feminine or more masculine, I will fucking do it because if that is how you are able to hear my idea, I know that we do not live in a perfect society where everyone is equally respected in the room. And so I kind of hate that when you have to find your balance, right?
Yes.
Like how many exclamation points in the email are good for you? But like, fuck it. If you feel like you can be heard one way or another, like amass power using those exclamation marks. And then when you get to the top, be like, everything is bullshit, tear it down. Right? But like,
have you noticed, like, through the years, it getting a little bit better? Like, have you noticed a change when you are still your feminine self, so to speak, when you're emailing or when you're text or talking to, I'll say maybe more male clients? Like, are they more responsive, or do you notice still that they're like, oh no, like,
Yeah, I do have, I work with some like pretty phenomenal people that I really do like see mano y mano. I feel respected as a peer. I respect them as a peer with a lot of my male clients. I do think it's a little bit of a confidence thing too. It's as much as it's someone else, accepting what you're throwing down. It's also like being cool with what you're throwing down.
Right.
I'm very confident with the value that I offer to my clients, with who I am, my specific point of view, my team's point of view, that I just like offer that. Yeah. And then you either pick it up or you don't. And it's no longer something that I'm trying to like micro adjust.
Yes.
I had someone, we did this big pitch and I had someone give me feedback where he's like, we pitched against a huge agency, the run by a 50-year-old white charismatic dude. And the feedback we got was, you should consider finding someone else to represent you who's a bit more credible in your pitches. Okay. And I was like, hold me fucking back. Okay. Because that's just like, it's your company. It was wild. But I think you have to just know like what's yours and what's not yours. Like what's the feedback you're going to listen to, and what are you going to go forward with as almost like a double down on who you are. There's
what feeds you and leave what doesn't. That makes sense.
And also like what you're saying about meeting, because there's a lot of power, especially in business, but in general, human interaction and meeting people where they're at. So it's not like you do bend to who you're speaking to so that you can be heard. And I don't think that I agree with what you're saying, because I don't think that that's completely unhealthy, even in relationships with like, if you know that your partner has a better time hearing you when you, that's human connection. So there's like a line, and that is a strength in a business like yours. And one of your personal strengths is like reading people and connecting with them where they're at.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to own what you bring to the table.
Exactly. I know.
I love that. Well, what are your wildest dreams in a perfect world for Scout Lab in the future? Like, how do you see yourself moving forward, even with the changing times, with everything that's happening in our social climate? Like, does that affect things too?
Yeah. Yeah, so uh, with Scout Lab, a few things. One, we just have more and more impact. Like 0.1%, 0.01% of all ad agencies with international accounts are female led. And
Oh, wow.
Oh,
around 4% of women run businesses generate over 1 million in revenue or more. And to be a part of that fraction, I think is exciting,
yeah.
but also like really frustrating. I think like
Yes.
private wealth is power, accumulating wealth is power. And so hopefully by Scout Lab existing, I hope that we grow our business, we grow our impact.
Yeah.
There are many things that we could do. You know, Willow and I have, you know, conceptualized or fantasized or imagined in the future. But I think it's just making larger impact with the campaign work that we're doing.
Yeah.
And then hopefully like showing women that they can do it too. Because I think you can replicate what you see. And so if you know, Willow is Native American. I think it's really important to have like underrepresented groups, even within, you know, categories of women in leadership. I'm very open about like my pedigree is not of like the agency world. I didn't come from an Ivy. I'm gay. It's like being very comfortable sharing my identity as a woman in power, the nuance to that, and unpacking the kind of intersectionality of what it means to be a woman in a leadership position, I think is hopefully what we can kind of show so that others can see that and model it too.
Yeah. There's so much power in just seeing yourself. It's something we take, men definitely take for granted, but then like we do, you know, it's like just seeing, even when Kamala with her acceptance speech, like just, I didn't even expect, obviously I expected it to like be a thing and feel a way, but I didn't even expect it to feel that deep where it was like our entire lives, like looking at these, watching, you know, my parents always followed, obviously elections, like most of the country. And so like always watching the debates, and never seeing anyone on stage that had anything to do with me. And I didn't think about it at the time. And then here we are. And it just like really hit me. So in any field, I mean, that's like the same. I think it's really powerful what you're doing. And especially, you know, like you said, between races, genders, just being able to grow up and see people doing what you're doing, which is also another reason it's really good that you didn't take that advice, that feedback about having someone, AKA having a male in there to give more credibility. It's like, because then the people that you guys are pitching to are still seeing a man do it. And that's the problem.
Did you have any like female role models in the marketing branding world that you could kind of look to be like, that's what I want to do? I mean, like the percentage was so small. It's interesting.
Yeah. So I had the extraordinary privilege of growing up with a mom who ran her own business. So
Oh, wow.
my mom and my dad he was a trader at JP Morgan. My mom was also in finance in New York. They met and then promptly divorced. And my dad went deep hippie life, like burner for many years in a row. And my mom in the middle of a divorce started an interior design firm because that was her passion. She like just paid attention to the things that she was paying attention to. And it ended up being like the source of income that allowed her to, you know, raise my sister and I.
Wow.
And I think having that model I watched my mom work in the evening. She was always out drafting, like as we were in front of the TV or like finishing dinner, like she worked her ass off. And I think having that model made it a no-brainer that I would want to run my own thing at some point.
Yeah.
Like I knew what an invoice was. Like I knew what client services looked like. I knew what a bad day looked like.
Right.
So important.
So I think that was like my model. And then all of my mentors, like all of my role models professionally were male because of course I was in a male-dominated industry, but there were huge advocates. I remember there was Jonathan Ehrlich. He's now a partner at Foundation Capital, but he was my boss at my first startup. And it was a Saturday, and I was working in the office, and he came in. I think he was like on a bike ride to like grab his computer and leave, and he was like, let me know when you start your company because I will be the first one to write you a check.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, that meant more to me than any accolade that came after, because it was the first person to be like, I believe in you and you can do whatever it is that you set your mind to, and let me know when that happens because I will support that too.
Regardless of it's support purely of you and who you are, because he didn't know what company it was going to be.
Yeah, he believed in you.
It's
That's
like
amazing.
Yeah. That kind of answers. I wanted to know if you have any crazy dream clients, you and Willow collectively. Do you have anyone that you're like manifesting for yourselves?
Listen, we've worked with some like big like the Venmos and the Adidas and Wix and this and that. I think that there's a lot of really cool investment going into climate tech right now that I'm like, come through.
Yeah.
You want a campaign? Come to mama. So I think it's there's no like big name that I would really like. I would be excited about a lot of different
of course
companies, but I think climate tech, like that's
I saw you guys shouting out like the Rainforest Coalition, and I'm obsessed with them. I donate to them every month, and I'm like they're incredible, and I hope more people get to see what they can do because they do so much cool shit.
Yeah, we did. My team like spearheaded this internally, but they did this like Earth Day campaign, just calling out greenwashing, and there was a bunch of like really great organizations and then greenwashed organizations that are just eco labels as a front to so it's marketing, right? It's making sure you're amplifying the right folks.
What advice, and you've given it throughout this episode, but what advice would you give, not even necessarily entrepreneurs, but anyone who's struggling to apply their unique gifts and propel it into a career change of any sort?
I would say just like go for it. Like run as hard as you can at the thing that like lights you up. One of the biggest learnings I had early on, and I still have to remind myself, is that everyone has had the problem that you're experiencing. So there's no problem that you cannot get through, and there's no problem that is just yours. And I think that can be like the hardest part, where it's like the first time you get negative feedback, the first time you have an unhappy client, and that I think as women, we're so empathetic. Specifically, it's like releasing that. It's like everyone's had a bad day. Everyone's fucked up. Move on. And I think when you release yourself of the requirement to be perfect, you are able to do whatever the fuck you want to do. And that's what life is about.
No problem is just yours is amazing, because it doesn't devalue the problem that you're having. It could be a very big problem, but you don't own it.
No, you share it. I mean, is sharing something like that you actively do, like when you got the bad feedback for the first time, when you start to get that and you're starting to process that, was sharing that with other people, with Willow, something that you would do to kind of, process and move on from?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's also like, nothing phases me anymore. But I think it's also like sharing that experience with younger people. Like there are agency owners who are just starting out that are like, oh my God, I'm having a co-founder issue, or I'm having a team issue, or I'm having a client issue. And it's like, listen, if you approach this as a thoughtful, self-aware human, there's nothing you can't get through or learn from, and you will survive. You will 100% survive.
Right.
I take things so personally. And so I think making sure I have a community or like a support system that has my back and knows what I want to do, right? There's a lot. Early in Scout Lab, I didn't have the right support system all of the time. So when I would come with problems, which were very normal for starting a business, some people were like, why are you working so hard? Like, you're so stressed. There's an easier way.
Yeah.
So I think like the ruthless curation of your support system is so, so important to make sure that when you have those hard moments, you have people that are like, get back up, keep going.
Yeah. Something that my dad had told me, you just reminded me of when I got fired from our restaurant job that we worked at together, which I like fully manifested. I was like, thank God. But also like, what the hell, what do I do? And my dad said, I was on the phone with him one time and he's like, Molly, like whatever happens, 6 months down the road is going to come and you're going to be doing something and you're going to be here. So, and it was like not an answer, but it was like this relaxation of like, yeah, in 6 months, something's going to be happening. Like it doesn't give me any answers, but somehow it made me feel just like it gives perspective and you pan out and you're just like, all right, like I don't know. And it is scary, but 6 months down the road, I'm going to be eating lunch one day. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of like, yeah.
It's the sauce though. It's like,
yeah,
Yes.
in those fucking moments where you're like, this fucking sucks, right? You just got plot twist, move on.
Yeah, exactly. Man, Kaitlyn, thank you so much for taking the time and the East Coast time.
When are you going to write a memoir? Because I really feel like that's next. I'm not going to lie to you.
Oh my God.
No.
Yes.
Not yet.
It is. But eventually, you're writing.
Oh, Scout's Honor. That's what it's called. Scout's Honor.
That's cute.
Done. 100%.
At least we should name the episode it.
Oh, we should. Yep. Oh, that's cute. Thank you so much, Kaitlyn. It's so great catching up with you. I love you. I'm so proud of you. I am completely invigorated, inspired,
I'm
grateful, bowing down.
Boss bitch.
Yeah, for real. For real.
So inspired.
It's like such a unique story that she has, and yet it's also incredibly common. It's like this weird, but what it is it's not common to be able to channel it in the way that she has and like propel it into something bigger. But her, when she's talking about her path to where she is now, very common things that people go through, like getting what you're told you should achieve and then getting there and not being happy. And yeah, it's a mixed bag. And she's not wrong about her work ethic though. I even remember that from school, just like she will go harder than anyone else, whether, like she said, whether it's partying or for work, she will go harder than you. Do not try her.
But I hope, like, you can just be inspired by her story. If you feel like you're not ready for this or if you feel like it's too late, it is not.
No.
If you're listening to us for a reason. It's because our number one brand, speaking of branding, is all about transitioning into the life that makes sense for you. Pay attention, as Kaitlyn said, to what you're paying attention to. Find the life that makes sense for you. And it's never too late.
No.
Anna Wintour became the editor of Vogue at 39. Ariana Huffington started the Huffington Post at 50.
Morgan Freeman got his first big role at like 40 years old.
It's like,
you really don't just do it. And also, like she mentioned, I forget how she worded it, but you have to allow yourself to change. You have to allow your priorities to change. You have to allow your desires and your goals to change. Because if you continue to hold yourself to who you were at a certain age, I think it's hard. It's easy for people to be like, well, I didn't achieve this and I wanted this when I was 20. I wanted this my whole life. But it's okay to be like, I don't want this anymore. That's not failing. That's not giving up. It's allowing yourself to evolve.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're going to shout out some nonprofits here. First is Many as One, feeding the front line of public hospitals and BLM protests using meals from local restaurants. #InMyScrubs campaign was designed to spread the message of sheltering in place and support healthcare workers on the front lines. They raised $160,000, which sent over 50,000 meals across hospitals most impacted by COVID-19 in the U.S.
And Kaitlyn was involved in this. So in the In My Scrubs campaign and co-conspirator for Many as One. So this is very relevant to her.
Oh, nice. Since then, Many as One has expanded and now applies donations to include the front line of protests as well as public hospitals. They unequivocally support the Black Lives Matter movement and will do anything within our power to keep protesters safe and nourished. That's from the quote from them. Many as One's mission is to support local communities through digital charitable campaigns. So to learn more and donate, please visit manyasone.org. And to learn more about the #InMyScrubs campaign, visit inmyscrubs.com.
Yes. And another nonprofit that Kaitlyn actually just mentioned to me yesterday that she wanted to shout out. So it's Neighbors in Action, formerly known as the Crown Heights Community Mediation Center, is a unique neighborhood institution in Brooklyn, New York, with the goal of building safer and healthier communities. Neighbors in Action seeks to demonstrate how places once torn apart by violence and disinvestment can become peaceful, vibrant communities through the collaborative efforts of local residents, nonprofit organizations, businesses, elected officials, and faith-based leaders. From their site, it says, we work to create communities where violence is neither needed nor wanted. Neighbors have increased autonomy and decision-making capabilities, and the people who want to lead have the skills to do so. And their site is neighborsinaction.org.
Word. Please subscribe to our Patreon because we got one and it's only $3, $7, $11, whatever you want. We're going to give you the right amount of gifts and love that corresponds to
corresponds
the
to
gifts
how
and
much
love you give.
Yeah, exactly. And that includes extended interviews, bonus content behind the scenes. You have the option on one of the tiers to choose your own episode topic within reason, bitches. Don't get crazy.
Yeah, come on.
Or do get crazy. I mean, we'll probably do it.
We'll probably do it regardless, ironically.
Yes, but irony.
Yeah, well, we can do Q&As, and you're going to get exclusive OG merch from our first year because this isn't our first year. This is our second year.
We're in the terrible twos. So.
Oh, my God. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the SOS Pod. Subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google, wherever you find your podcast, you're going to find us. YouTube, I don't know if I said that already, SOS with Molly and Alyssa, and rate interviews. It helps us reach more people. Shout out to Nija and Steve, your OG patrons.
OG. I'm Molly Cottrell.
I'm Alyssa Rosano.
Here's to turning meltdowns
into magic.